Well, hi and welcome, Vicky.
Thank you and welcome, Kerry.
Hey, it's the Vicky and Kerry show.
Yes.
Sorry, that's a bit of Ariy coming through. They always love to have a joke with us. So tonight we've already just recorded a little short video on how we prepare for these. So if anyone wants
Yes.
to, they can refer back to that. We'll upload that as just a little short one. So you
Yes.
can, all our people that are watching in a perfect moment of now can
Yes.
look at that and see how we actually prepare for tonight. So here we are on the 22nd of the fifth month, 22. I just can't
Yes.
believe we're already in May for a start, but here we are.
Yes.
Now, tonight's guests, we have, as usual, our keepers of the keys who
Yes.
always, almost, we call it officiate
Yes.
and offer us their wisdom at every channeling we do.
Yes.
And we have Ariy, my guides,
Yes.
and Saint Germain's answered the call this week. So
Yes.
I'm actually going to hand it over to you tonight to do the
Yes.
introductions of our guests.
Okay. So, as Kerry mentioned, we have Keepers of the Keys, and yeah, they very much kind of anchor these discussions. They always open and they always close. So even when we have other guest-like beings, it's kind of odd to call them guests, but let's call them guests because they're divine guests. They come into these discussions, and they usually just kind of cap it off at the end and might give a final message or just like I said anchor that session. And as I've mentioned before, they're a group of 12 healing angels of the libraries of light, and the Akashic records are one of those libraries. So when they first introduced themselves to me, they said that they were my guide within the libraries. But what they've also were very clear about, that they're not just personal guides to me. They're here to connect with everyone who
Mm.
wants to connect with them. They're here to support humanity. And, they've chosen to work with me so that I can channel them, and so that they can do healing, support my healing work with people. So I channel the healing energy, and it comes through me. And they are, of course, they're a group of angels, but they also have a sense of humor. They sometimes they would tend to be a bit more serious and
Mm.
have greater gravitas, I would say it. Not necessarily seriousness, it's more gravitas. It depends on the power of the message that is coming through. Other times they can be very playful. It just depends on the energy of what's coming through. And it's been a real joy and privilege to be working with them. Now, we also have, and I have to say, it's not even quite a year that I've been channeling them. So I first
Mm.
met them, so to speak, in June of last year when I first started working in the Akashic Records. So I'll just let people know that.
And it's funny you should say that too. It was on the 21st of the 8th, 21 that
Yes.
Ari came through for a first full play date.
Wow.
So another
Okay.
palindrome. Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't even realize that.
Mm.
Yeah, so that brings us to Ari. Like Ari are Kerry's guides, and it's like, what am I doing channeling Kerry's guides? This is a bit more of an unusual story. Um, what
Mm.
had happened was that I was giving Kerry a healing within the Akashic Records. So I opened her Akashic Records expecting to have the Keepers of the Keys come through to give her a healing, but a totally different energy came through.
Yeah.
And for those of you who have met Ari before, they're all about joy. So while the keepers, they've got this gamut of energy, sometimes with more gravitas, sometimes with more playful. Like Ari are all about the joy,
Yeah.
and they can have a really strong healing energy. But when if that was the day, that's the 21st of August last year,
Yeah.
um, we were doing past life healing, we were doing physical healing, all via Zoom. And there were times that they were serious while they were doing it, and they were explaining what they were doing. But then they would bring it back to the humor, back to the humor.
Yeah.
And I can say I never laughed so hard in a healing session. Like, who would think that? It was
Yeah.
all and they were moving my body and getting
Mm.
Kerry to move hers, telling, like, but they were, getting, I'm not even doing it properly now, but they're like, shake your shoulders and
Yeah.
do just to,
I remember laughing
they were
so
like,
hard, tears coming, and
they were like,
yeah.
shake it out, shake it out. And what was really interesting to me is that when I laugh really hard, that's when my asthma gets triggered and I start coughing. When I was channeling Ariy, there was none of that. I was
Yeah.
laughing, and like you said, tears, like laughing so hard I was doubled over on the desk,
Yeah.
and there was none of that. And as soon as I closed your records and I stopped channeling them, and as I was laughing at the remembrance of what came through, the coughing started again.
Started. Yeah.
So I find I'm really fascinated with that. So it was just an experience. It was never anything that was planned that I would channel Ariy, your guides, in any
Yeah.
way. And have we mentioned that they're Pleiadian?
No, we haven't.
So they're a group of Pleiadian guides, and they share Kerry's soul mission to spread joy.
Mm.
And they
Yes.
certainly do that, I believe.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
definitely my cheeky partners.
Yeah.
I can't say in crime because that's not exactly where we go, but it
Well,
is a
I would
nice
say
saying.
for anyone who knows you, Kerry, would say, well, of course that would have to be part of your soul mission.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Lovely.
And Saint Germain.
Yeah.
Wow. As I was explaining in the previous video, he has just a loving, warm energy. And it was at the retreat where I first met you, dear one,
Mm.
Kerry, where I met Saint Germain. So this is like the end of 2017. And we were on a crystal shamanism retreat. We were appointed as each other's roommates.
Yeah.
Had never met each other before.
No.
Uh, I still kind of like love that.
Yeah.
And in and it was a week long retreat,
Yeah, we're
as
there
I
for a
recall.
week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Five days or something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And in one of the very first, in the first part of the first few days, I can't remember exactly when, we were led to say that they were going to meet a new guide.
Mm.
So we're going to journey to meet a new guide. And in that journey, when they said that you're going to meet a new guide, I felt someone coming up right up to my face, kissing me all over my face.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can't see you. You're too close to my face. I can't see you.
I haven't heard this
Haven't you?
before.
Didn't I tell
No.
you? Okay, so that it was right up my, if I can't see you, I can't see you. You're too close. And he stood back, and I'm getting goosebumps now, telling the story. And I just knew it was Saint Germain, and I was like, wow, Saint Germain. Like, and that's not just any old. And I shouldn't even say that any old guy. What I mean is that he's well known
Well
to
known. Yeah.
many people in the spiritual field, being an ascended master, and anyone who knows about him knows that he works with the violet flame, and he is the alchemist.
Mm. Mm.
And his last known incarnation was as the Count of Saint Germain, and he was prominent within the royal courts of Europe, and known as the magician and the alchemist, and all of that.
The
And
politician and
yeah,
to
and
a degree.
said to have influenced a lot of things,
Mm.
and within politics, including in the US, but uh, more once he ascended rather than in
Yeah.
form.
Okay.
But certainly, he is said to have seen the French Revolution and tried to influence things so that it wouldn't be as violent, but people are very stuck in their ways. But anyway, he's also known to have been previously incarnated as Father Joseph, as the Merlin, and so he's had many, of course, incarnations previously to being the Count of Saint Germain, and now people refer to him as Saint Germain. And so whenever you're working with the violet flame, it means that you're most likely working with Saint Germain. So he's mastered that. So Kerry's just gone off, but I'll just keep talking about Saint Germain. And so when I experienced that retreat, another time, and you'll remember this, Kerry, is that when I meditated in the world's largest amethyst cave
Yeah.
at the Crystal Castle. Yeah, so he was very much there as part of that, and has been with me since during healing sessions with clients. And so often we'll work with the violet flame, and sometimes we'll come through every session, like it's so I work with him quite closely in that sense. So he's a part of Ariy, Ariy being the collective name of the group of guides, angels, masters who work with me. Yep. And yeah, so I'm excited that he's wanted to come through. And part of me was like, oh, it's Saint Germain. What are people going to think of me channeling Saint Germain? So I still am very human and get those thoughts. But then I was like, well, it's not about me. He's wanting to share a message.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm more special than anyone else. It's anyone can connect with his energy. And this is about him just taking an opportunity to speak through me, and with anything that is channeled by me or anybody else. And the keepers say this, and I say this, keep what resonates for you. Don't give your truth and power over to us. Sit with what comes through. See what registers in your body as truth for you. And if it's not your truth, you can let it go.
Yeah.
And that way you have ownership of what is your truth. Because anytime you move away from your truth, you move away from yourself. Now, sometimes you come back to truth, and that's okay because we evolve. But I think this is something important for anyone to know, because I've seen people have a tendency to give their power and their truth away to people who channel. And I don't see it as beneficial in any way that we should do that. I think we should have, I'm a real believer in critical thinking and critical reflection. And, that's interesting for someone who's saying she's channeling.
Yeah.
But I like to believe that I have a more integrated perspective and have an integrated intuition, if you will. Yeah. So there's both logic and intuition. And so you're allowed to engage your thinking mind. You're allowed to question. You're allowed to reflect and review and see what fits with your truth. And sometimes it doesn't fit with our truth because we're not yet ready to hear or move into another layer of truth. And sometimes it's because we've actually already moved beyond it.
Yeah.
It's just about knowing, and discerning for yourself, where are you at? Or it could be that that's just not true for you at all. And that's okay. I think some people are really caught up with it being a one truth. Ultimately, we may get to a one truth. But while we're here in our physical bodies, we have to connect with our truth first.
And have our experiences.
Yes, it's why we're here in physical bodies. Because if we can't connect with what's true for us here as us, then we might as well not be here. Yeah. We're here to have these experiences and see what is true for us. The divine is experiencing what's true for us through us. It's getting to experience itself through us. So
we're all woven.
If we're going to deny that experience, then we're going to deny the whole gamut, the complexity, the richness of what is the divine. And, ultimately we do get back to the one, but we're here individuated even as we're connected. And I think that's something that I would like to share to people, even as we move into the channeling.
And I think if that's a perfect segue to do so, if you'd like to prepare
Sure.
yourself, and we get to welcome in the keepers.
Okay. Whew. Okay. Shake Vicky out. Welcome, dear ones.
And welcome to you.
We are pleased to be here, let us say. And we have Ariy. They are a strong energy at this time. And we're going to ask them to step back because their energy is so strong. Okay, thank you, Ariy. They'll have their turn. All right, so now we are speaking as keepers of the keys, and we are pleased to be with you, and we are pleased to connect with all of you in this eternal moment of now.
It's always a blessing to have you here, and
Yes.
we've got some wonderful subjects to cover,
Yes.
and some quite deep ones today. I've
We
had
look
some
forward
stuff
to it.
come up through the week that I went, okay, these are definitely
Yes.
serious things to be brought up and opened up for us to have a look at. So over the last 9 weeks, I've been doing a course with Vicky and yourself
Yes.
in
Yes.
integrating human and divine, and a lot of
Yes.
that we did discuss blueprints,
Yes.
our divine blueprints. And I just wonder if we could start, because a lot of people watching
Yes.
this now would not have done that course,
That's right.
to just give us an outline of what a divine blueprint is.
Okay. We like this question because this is part of the reason why we are working with Vicky and part of what she is here to do and what we are here to do through her. Now, if you understand that when you, before you are born, that is, you have a soul's plan, and the people are familiar with the concept of a soul's plan. In other words, you plan some of these circumstances of your life. Certainly that includes the parents you were born to, the families you're born into, even unto the schools you may first begin to attend. And so there is more detail in the younger years of your life. So the first 7 to 8 years, because that is being set forth through the families that you are going to come into. And so there's more, we wouldn't say set in stone, but more set within the blueprint, within the soul's plan for you to experience. And then things seem to either peter away or diminish in its setting. So if you can understand a blueprint, a divine blueprint is like an architectural blueprint. If you've ever seen an architectural blueprint, it's literally on blue paper, and it outlines the framework of a house. And it shows where all the doors are, where the windows are, where the one room ends and where another begins, where the piping will be for the kitchen, the bathroom, and how that will look like. Now, what happens with the blueprint for this house is that once that is agreed to, in other words, just as you agree to enter into a particular lifetime, then that is solidified, physicalized, and made real in this physical reality. But what we would say is that there's still much to choose from within the parameters of that blueprint. So what we would say is that you still get to choose the colors of the walls, the kind of flooring that you wish. Are they going to be timber floors? Is it going to be carpeted? Is it going to be tiled? You get to choose what furniture you put in the house, what prints you put up on the wall, and in some cases also who you invite into the home.
So for me, I'm seeing that as like the blueprint's the structure in which we choose to enter this lifetime.
Yes.
And we all work together with our team up there. So it's us
Yes.
guiding this blueprint
Yes. Yes.
of what we want to experience and what experiences are going to give us what we're actually wanting to experience. And then I'm wondering whether contracts, because these are some of the lingo that
Yes.
we're hearing in our spiritual circles, is contracts then become, I think there's, to me, I feel there's two forms of contract,
Yes.
pre-birth and then after birth. And some of the pre-birth ones will be those contracts where we will hope to meet this person or have that experience. Would that then be like those items of furniture that we might take up and might leave? And then there's the contracts of, like, I might go and get the coffee off this guy this morning, just those little contracts that are being made throughout.
So let us expand on that, because anything can be an imperfect analogy, but we want to make it as clear for you as possible. So what we say is the blueprint provides the parameters for your lifetime. And what that means is that you cannot choose outside of those parameters.
Yep.
So you cannot choose new parents.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you can have the experience of having different caregivers who become your adoptive parents, for example, carers, foster parents. Of course, you can have that experience, but you cannot change your birth parents.
Yeah.
Your birth parents are your birth parents, and that cannot be undone. Similarly, with an architectural blueprint, you can't change where the external structure of the house is unless you knock down the house. Now, where the analogy goes with your lifetimes, that would mean you being born again.
Yes.
Into new bodies. That would be a whole different new blueprint. So this is where some things cannot be changed. So if it is within your divine blueprint or the parameters of your divine blueprint that you are to experience extreme wealth, then you'll experience extreme wealth. But if it's not, then you will not. And we want to be very clear is that while there are infinite possibilities and probabilities within those parameters, there are still some things that you will not experience if they're outside of those parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And another analogy that we may use is that you can go to a restaurant and choose anything from that menu, and you're free to choose. But you cannot be at this restaurant and be complaining that you can't choose from that other restaurant.
Yeah.
So there are parameters, even though you have many choices to make. Now, when it comes to soul agreements, we prefer agreements than contracts, because contracts from your perspective means that you are bound by it and that there are negative consequences if you do not fulfill them. Now, because there are many, many infinite possibilities woven into your divine blueprint. Mm-hmm. So you may have an agreement to have a life partnership with someone. Now, this is an example of something that's not going to come up in early childhood, for example, but in adulthood. Now, for that to unfold, there would have to be, still within your human experience, human choices. You still have free will from your human perspective to fulfill these choices or not. Yeah. Now, this is where many people get confused, because some will not fulfill their choices, their agreements. And it may just mean that they need to come back and do it again, perhaps with someone else, or perhaps with you again, and vice versa. Now, this is where we get into more complicated territory, where it's hard to keep everything in mind from a human perspective, because there are so many variables.
I see it like algebra.
Yes.
Like algebra is so complex.
Yes. There are many decision trees.
Yeah.
We see it as decision trees, timelines, and some will collapse, some new ones will branch open, and they continue to evolve. So when it comes to those relationships and contracts and soul agreements, Some things are so strongly embedded within your divine blueprint that it will be felt as a contract. You are meant to do that.
Yeah.
And that is something where your soul has either volunteered or chosen to experience, either for the benefit of yourself or another soul or both. Now, when that occurs, then we would say that there are strong probabilities for that to occur. And it would seem as if your life has set you up for that to occur. And usually that is
I
the case.
totally understand that one. Yes.
Yes. And but then you may also understand that your soul may still be, for some people it's not as strong as that. Your soul is still seeking a particular experience. And it could be what some would call, let's for ease of language, call a soul lesson. And you have been working on this for a number of lifetimes, for example. Sometimes when you've been working on it for a number of lifetimes, your soul wishes to stack the decks, so to speak, to make sure you get it this lifetime. And so there are the things, they're going to be the big pieces within your divine blueprint that you need to, let's say, even change the words need. There's a strong impulse for you
And
to
lots
move
of
through it.
opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Endless opportunities.
Yeah.
And we would say the opportunities are repeated and repeated and
Yeah.
repeated until you get it right. It's like a default setting. You keep going back to it. Keep going back to it. You try and diverge and move away from it. You're brought back to it.
Yeah.
And that is like a default setting. You're brought back to it so that you can move through it in this lifetime because you have stacked the deck for success on a soul level. Now, what is interesting from a human perspective, if that is a soul lesson, often on a human level, you will not see it as success. For you, the success is the material gain, the abundance, and certainly with the popularization of law of attraction teachings, then people see spiritual success even as material gain. And there has been a real cross wiring of what is spirituality. Now, of course, that is one of the spiritual laws in terms of the law of mirroring. What is within you must be seen outside of you. So the universe will mirror back to you what is within. Now, what we want to be clear about is this teaching is not always compatible with the understanding of the divine blueprint. Because that teaching, when you take it out of context of all other spiritual laws, will tell you that you can do, create anything that you want. Yes, to a point. Within the parameters of the divine blueprint. Now, we don't wish to say that this means that you are limited, because there are still infinite possibilities within that. Now, what we will also say is that the divine blueprint is not just your parameters. It is all the highest potentials of your abundance, your wealth, your health, love, business, etc. within that. But while you may be trying to attract it over here, make it happen over here, you've missed the point of what's in here and what your soul is calling you towards. We call this creation from an ego perspective, a personality perspective. We're all about creation with the soul. And so if you're creating with the soul, you're creating from within your divine blueprint. And so when you can connect with your divine blueprint, you allow, and Vicky can feel this expansion moving through her body, like a golden energy matrix of light. held within your multidimensional DNA, within your soul, held by your higher self. That is all your highest potentials for this lifetime. And then often people will come to us and ask, what is my purpose? Your purpose is held within your divine blueprint. But what we'll also say is that in most cases, you will not get to your higher purpose without going through those soul lessons first. Because that is the purpose of your soul.
Mm. And I can attest to that because I've like woven in and out of the spiritual realms since I can remember things back as early as 4 years of age, then 9. And each time I blocked it off in my early 20s, happened again. And then I blocked it off and I'm like, no, I'm going to go party for a few more years. That looks like too much hard work.
Yes.
And woven in and different things that have happened. And it just kept coming around, the whole awakening of spirituality. And then when it did happen, I then went into this, I just devouring every course and reading every book and trying to almost bring it all to life.
Yes.
And it wasn't until I did the Akashic reading course and I sat down and went, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this writing channel. And I sat down and wrote this most amazing thing came out and I learned trust. And I realized then in that learning that this was the biggest part of my journey, was to learn to trust myself and that it was safe to step into this arena again. And then it's come to me that, previous lifetimes when we've incarnated as the shamans, the healers, the herbalists, whatever it might have been, and we were hung and quartered for our actions and our beliefs, that fear has come along into this incarnation. Obviously fear through DNA as well, and those other areas that it comes through. So for me, like trying to force it, and it wasn't until I learned that I just had to trust, and it was all sitting there waiting.
As it always is. And can we say then, dear one, that you were always going to be brought back?
Yeah.
You had stacked the deck to always return to a spiritual path.
Yeah, I sure did. And that's the other thing with tools, astrology and numerology and your choice of name obviously also helps build that structure of the divine blueprint.
Let us say the astrology is a marker of your divine blueprint. So it is, in a way, captured in form through the cosmos. It is why you select your birth, your time, your place. And so that is then can be interpreted by a good astrologer. And
which I just experienced. I just did mine with Sophia from quantum astrology. And that was probably only 2 months ago. And when I didn't know this beautiful woman, and then she came in and did this reading, and I was like, oh my God, wished I had known this years ago, but it was still in perfect timing. And I got to find out that I'm not going crazy. This really did happen, and that's happened for this reason. And I am standing in my own personal power. And it just all was reflected back through that chart and the way she interpreted it as well with the numbers. And she truly is quantum, the astrology she does. It's not just about the planets, it's the degrees, the numbers, everything. And pretty amazing. So I just thought, wow, that's a really great indicator and an access point to probably learn a little bit more about yourself and your divine blueprint.
Yes. What we'll say is that in choosing your chart and then in choosing your name, because you choose your name before you come, knowing that there will be a particular vibration and numerology to your name, for example. So everything is pre-chosen. Now, it is not to say that there aren't missteps sometimes, and it's why some people will change their names
Yeah.
consequently.
Okay. Yeah.
But also, you may see it that they had one lot of energy in one part of their life, and that no longer reflects the rest of their life
Where
as
they're
well.
at. Yeah.
So, all of these can be tools to support you in moving into a greater understanding, a more fuller understanding of your divine blueprint. Now, when we read your divine blueprint, we are reading, of course, through the Akashic Records,
Mm.
for it is all there too.
Wonderful. Now, the question that it's still in this energy of divine blueprints, and I sat down and did a conscious channel
Yes.
question, and this was it. What is the best way to fold ourselves around the life we intended when we created our divine blueprint?
There's a richness to that question. So we're just feeling that. What a beautiful question.
Even the word fold, I'm like, oh,
Yes.
okay. And then it's come to me all week, enfolded and folded. It's in everything that I've been reading. And I went, okay.
Okay. So we already began laying the basis where you may create something from your ego or your personality,
Mm-hmm.
and you may create from your soul. Now, this is where we get into a discussion between the differences between personal will, personal free will,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and higher will. Now, let's use your story as an
Mm-hmm.
example. If you had chosen, could have exercised your free will to avoid all spiritual paths. And you could have kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And sometimes people do that.
Yeah.
But what often happens is that if you have stacked the decks like you did, then the lesson gets louder.
Sure did.
Yes. So it means it becomes more unavoidable until there is a surrendering to that process. Now, this is not a giving up of free will. We want to be very clear on that. You still have the free will choice to butt your head up against the wall if you want to. But it is up to you. If you no longer want to feel the pain of you butting your head up against the wall, then you ultimately surrender and saying, okay, this wall is not going to budge.
Mm.
And I have free will choice to continue to butt my head against the wall, but this wall is not going to budge. So then I can accept that this wall is not going to budge, even if I'm not happy about that.
Yeah.
That again is a free will choice. Now, there is a releasing of resistance with that. When you release resistance, there's an acceptance also. They come hand in hand. You may accept even if you would prefer things to be different. But in a true acceptance of what is, then you release completely the resistance to what is. So you accept that the wall is not going to move, even as you accept that you banging your head against the wall is not going to move it. Then you may move further, and you may ask, well, what is the wall here to teach me or help me to remember? Now, ultimately, it's all a state of remembrance, because as a soul, you know it all, or certainly as a higher self, you do. Your soul has come to experience it here on the physical plane. And so it is seeking to remember itself as love, as light within your physical bodies. And is choosing to do this through your human experiences, through your human body. It is why the journey of the body is so important. Now, when you take it even a step further again, and you acknowledge that there is a higher will that is held by your higher self for your life, you start to align yourself then with the highest potentials of what is in your divine blueprint. This is when you start to align your personal will with your higher will. You are doing it freely. It is a state of surrender, but is not a state of giving up. It is not a passive process. You actively align yourself with that higher will and say, okay, I'm meant to be on a spiritual path. I am done with the universe trying to show me through its messages that keep getting louder and bigger and sometimes more dramatic or more chaotic, more unavoidable. And I will actually take this path wherever it may lead me to. Now, there's a fluidity in that, and that's where the unfoldment comes in. There's a fluidity in that. It is like, instead of trying to paddle in the rapid rivers, trying to paddle upstream, you allow yourself to move with the force of the river and allow it to take you where it will. Now, there is a point where you must put your paddles back into the raft. Your paddles, in other words, your attempts to go somewhere else will be ineffective. And you may as well enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
But that is up to you.
Yeah, and that's for me. I know when I call it my real first awakening back into this world was exactly that. I was standing at the kitchen window, been smoking pot and waiting for the kids to come home off the bus. Like I was just in this world of, I didn't want to, what am I going to do? Boredom.
Yes.
Boredom doesn't even explain where I was, but
yes.
And through tears, looking out the window, thinking, oh my God.
Lost Carrie. So we have Carrie back.
Yay, I lost the computer, so we've moved to the phone. Gotta love technology.
Yes.
So what I was explaining was, I'd just gotten to that stage where life was, I knew there had to be something more.
Yes.
And through tears, I just thought, right, what am I going to do? And the best thing I could come up with was go to the hairdresser. They always pick you up. And
yes.
that's where my journey started. That idea came to my head, went into the hairdresser, and lo and behold, there was a healer's card sitting on the counter at the hairdresser's.
Don't you
So
love
I
it?
went to her, and within 2 sessions, I saw her twice, and I'd completely stopped drinking alcohol, stopped all the smoking pot. So within a month, I was totally out of that world and starting to
Yes.
focus on myself, and then the flow began.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we love that it's a step-by-step process because we often teach that, and then people dismiss the simplicity of that and are too afraid of making a step for it being a wrong step, and or saying it's illogical. What would a hairdresser do for a spiritual path? And yet that was the perfect logical step for you to take so that you can see the card from the healer. And let us say, even if it wasn't a card from a healer, it could have been something you needed to hear that day. It could have been just to feel a little bit better about yourself, and then the next point of inspiration would have come. But then that was a very direct evidence of that step leading you to the next step.
And here we are.
Yes. How
and
many
a couple
years
of years in
later?
between.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay, so that was one way of unfolding ourselves around. Also feel that like just getting to know ourselves, introspection, meditation, all those
Yes.
sorts of things guide us towards this sort of understanding of ourselves and our blueprint and what we really would like to do.
Let us say that when it comes to a any spiritual practice, ultimately the point is to reconnect you back to yourself and to connect yourself to the divine. Now,
Yeah.
a a spiritual practice may or may not connect you to your divine blueprint. But if it is your intention to do so, then you may connect with it. Everything that you do is interfaced through your divine blueprint. Now, there are going to be many things that are free will choices, relationships that are not written into your divine blueprint, not as soul agreements as you would understand it. It is where you are at free will choice to engage in a relationship to for any number of human reasons. And then there are other relationships, like you said, with the barista that serves you your coffee. There may be a higher purpose in that relationship, or there may not. It is about honoring all forms of relationship. And sometimes what can occur, it could be the cleaner, it could be the barista, it could be the person that services your car. Regardless of all those circumstances, there can be many multiple roles that are played, and certainly an exchange of energy that supports each other along the way through your journey through life.
Mm. And then, like you were explaining earlier, the structure of a blueprint, well, I'll call it structure for the point of
Yes?
this comment, was like I would have loved to have sat down with you or Ari and go, okay, what's my blueprint? What am I here to do?
Yes?
I want it in A, B, C, D, and E, so I can
Yes?
follow the path of the blueprint as
Yes?
such. And I think that in looking at it that way was a little naive on
Yes?
my behalf because there's so much interplay, and like you've
Yes?
just explained, there's so many choice trees. I can't remember what the words used,
Yes?
but different ways we can go. And also we wouldn't access our free will if we
That's
knew
what we
what.
would say.
Yeah.
Now, we would say that you're then following instructions
Mm,
and learning to be obedient and to
yeah.
surrender your will, even your free will, to another. And this is what may seem subtle and confusing for some.
Yeah.
What is the difference then when you surrender to a higher will? If you were to follow a set of instructions like automatons, like robots, then there is no creative choices within that. You're following a formula, and then everything is predetermined.
You're
Every
losing the
choice,
richness. Mm,
every choice is predetermined. Every outcome is predetermined. You're not learning anything from this. You're copying, and copying from a playbook, it does not have any creator energy in it.
mm,
Whereas you are here to be creators. Now, when you are here, you learn through the experience. Experience is the greatest teacher.
yeah.
We can tell you all you want what is in your divine blueprint, but it will not mean iota of difference compared to the actual experience of it. Now, having the guidance as well as the experience can make it richer, certainly, and that can be part of the process. But what we will say is through the living of the experience, that is what you take with you in your soul. That
Mm.
is why you're here in the human bodies. If you did not have those experiences, you could not embody those lessons so that you can take the benefit of into future and subsequent lifetimes.
Mm. Yeah, I totally get that now. And um, I think all this comes along with growth. And that's why I thought just I'd really like to put that out there so that
Yes.
others don't have to take the slower route in this area of our
Yes.
experience. And I suppose that's also reflective of with parenting too. Like you can tell your children to do this
Yes.
or not to do this. And
Yes. That's a
they're
perfect
either,
example.
they're going to go, no, I know better, or I'm going to go and
Yes.
try that for myself. And when they do
Yes.
have the experience, then they go, oh,
Ah,
yeah, maybe mum was onto something there.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. And that is the perfect example of it. And notice that in terms of normal human development, what occurs within that is that there's natural rebellion. It is
Mm,
part of normative human development. You must rebel so that you can individuate and have your free will choices. Otherwise,
yeah.
you're making other people's choices, not your own. And so that is a perfect depiction of why the experience is necessary so that it can become your wisdom.
Mm. And that joy and that excitement when we create something
Yes,
is just that embodiment, like bringing it into
yes.
the body, the feelings and that joy, and they're jumping around the room. Well, I do anyway. That's me. Jump around with excitement when something happens that um, you've created and it's been supported, or it's come out exactly how you wanted it, or whatever. And it's that like the embodiment of joy. So I think if you knew that, oh, okay, if I do A, B, and C, it's going to equal D, you wouldn't get that
No,
experience.
yes, yes.
Mm,
And let us say that when it comes to working with a divine blueprint, because there are many, many, as we said, infinite potentials within that, it we can support you to accelerate the process if that is what is in your best and highest good,
yeah,
so that you're not fumbling in the dark.
yeah.
So this is where you get the best of both worlds. Now, you can also do this by sitting down with the intentions to receive insights from within your divine blueprint, to receive activations from within your divine blueprint, because within that are hidden gifts and talents and things that you're yet to even birth out into the world. All of that is held within you. So, in that essence, is the energy of the Akashic records, the
Mm,
libraries of light. So, you're accessing energy of the divine. So, it is pure creative energy. Now,
mm,
you can see that you must do it on your own, but we wouldn't recommend it. So
mm,
it may seem like we're now contradicting ourselves, but we are not. What we are saying, if you choose to engage in a co creative process
mm,
with us, with the divine, your guides, whoever is supporting you from spirit, then this co creative process helps to give you the gifts of both worlds, the gifts of experience, so that can be turned into wisdom, the gifts of the divine, so you have magic, and then all that unfolds through a
mm,
series of miracles. Now, that is a wondrous experience. Whereas if you feel that you must do it or figure it out all on your own, then that is a very lonely experience. So, this is where spiritual community, both human and divine, comes into play.
mm,
And you may receive support, receive a divine blueprint activation, ask questions about your divine blueprint, your personal ones, and then go away and have your experiences and weave through it and dance through it, because there are no true missteps,
mm.
because each step will take you to the next one.
Yeah, and for some of the recent steps I've been through have been quite harrowing, and
Yes.
almost I think I've had another dark night of the soul since that first awakening one.
Yes.
And things that I've gone through, like separation in marriage, that I never ever thought I would be doing that in my
Yes.
life, and here I am, and it was very hard to do, but coming out on the other side, I can see why,
Yes.
and what I have learnt from it, and how I can move forward from it, and the gold that that marriage gave me to
Mm.
build my life for the future, and how it's all come together.
Yes.
So there's highs and the lows, but the lows are
Yes.
what make the highs become so wonderful in our lives, I think.
Yes. It's all part of the palette.
Mm,
Without the contrast, you cannot appreciate the wonders of the highs, as you call them.
mm,
That is part and parcel of the human experience.
mm. Okay, well, the next question is quite deep and heavy, and I really don't know how to bring it up other than I have seen it in the news. I
Mm-hmm.
never watched mainstream television, but I was walking past and someone must have had the television on, and I heard that New South Wales, the state in which both Vicky and I live,
Yes.
have just put through a parliamentary or whatever they do, I don't know, but and it's something to help with voluntary assisted dying.
Okay.
Now, I don't want to go into the politics of that, but what I want to do is if you could give us some clarity around, there's a lot of talk out in the world
Yes.
that if you take your own life or make that choice, if you take your own life or we use this voluntary assisted dying method,
Yes.
that you're going to have hell to pay in the afterlife, or your next life's going to be
Yes.
harder, or so there's all these stories that are
There
out
is.
there. So rather than talk about the actual parliamentary decision, I would love to talk about the energetics of the
Yes.
truth of the outcomes of anyone that chooses that path.
We want to fully honor this question. And for this is a process that for many there is fear, there is of course uncertainty, there is pain.
Mm,
Now, there are some who would say, as just as you have described, that if you do engage in a process in that there are either A, karmic consequences, or B, that you would have to come back and do it all over again, and so you've kind of
mm,
wiped the opportunity of your that lifetime.
yeah.
And we want to say that this is different from the energy of suicide.
Mm-hmm,
When you can understand that the medical system is designed to prolong your life,
yeah.
and regardless of the quality of that life. Now, often what can occur, whether you are moving towards the end of life through old age or through debilitating terminal illness, there are many mechanisms which can prolong the life of the body,
Yeah.
but no longer necessarily supports the soul.
No qualities. Yeah.
Yes. And this is where we would not give an answer that is a one size fits all
Mm,
for everyone. Everyone will have to do their own soul searching about what is right for them and what is right for their family member. Now, we do not see it as humane to have someone suffer endlessly because their body's life can be prolonged through modern medicine, when even just the ending of that assistance would terminate their life. And we know that then the program is talking about actual taking actions to end that life that is over and above, say, switching off life support.
Yes, yes.
So we want to be clear on that as well. Now, some would say, and we want to be clear on this because some will have heard it and will have strong feelings, questions, doubts about this, when they say that if you take a voluntary assisted death process, that it means that you need to come back and do that again.
Mm.
Now, this is very different to say that you have received a terminal diagnosis where you are still well
Yeah, yeah.
and may still have some time to live and choose to end your life. It's very different to someone who is at the end of that diagnosis, suffering in body and mind, or being almost completely absent from body and mind because they are under the influence of such strong medications. In those circumstances, let's start with that one, where the body is experiencing such deep pain and there is no consciousness while they're experiencing it. Is there benefit to that soul to experience it? No. And you would know when you're in that situation, you would not wish that upon your worst enemy. And if you were to truly be guided by your heart instead of what you think is right or what may happen or may not happen, your impulse would be to relieve people of their suffering. That can only come perhaps with soul searching, and that is all well and good. And this is where it is useful to have discussions before people lose their capacity to make decisions around things like that. And this is where we would caution is that we would not wish to see any of these processes abused in any way, where people are unduly forced into ending their life prematurely because they feel like they are a burden upon their family, for example, or on a medical system. That's where we will caution on the other side. Now, is there a benefit to someone experiencing a cancer diagnosis, for example? There can be. There may be sole reasons why this is occurring for someone. It is not to say that it's their fault. It is not to say that it's their karma. So to suggest that they're going to experience karmic consequences for not experiencing the full gamut of the cancer experience is cruel. But can there be awakenings and revelations through the cancer experience? There absolutely can be. And you would not wish to rob anyone of those through premature death. And so there is a lot of variability in between all of these, from allowing someone the experience and then also similarly from not allowing them to unduly suffer. And anyone who's been through such a process could attest at how grave that situation is, the degree of responsibility to make such a decision. And this is where death doulas could assist in this process to prepare people for their dying whether assisted or not. And this would be to make peace with what is coming, and so there may be a form of acceptance in that. It may be to make peace in relationships that they've been estranged from. It may be to come to a spiritual awakening of sorts. For there is, when it is the soul's time to depart, there is a shift. The soul helps the body to prepare, including the mind. So when you work with the soul, then the soul's agenda and timing is clear. So for some people, it is right to have the assisted dying process. For others, it is not. And that's why there is no one size fits all. We would say in this, as in everything, go within, meditate, seek your own answers, consult with others, family, professionals. What were the wishes or are the wishes of that family member? And be really clear. And so what we would say ultimately, and we know that you preface this by saying it's a heavier subject, and the dying process is, but there can also be joy for some. There can be healing for many. And there can also be celebration of the life that was lived. There can also be relief of letting go of the human burdens. And there can be joy knowing that they are moving on to the next great adventure of their soul.
Yeah.
It is you that are grieved, the ones that are left behind. The soul that departs does not grieve because they are not departed. They have changed form. They are ever present, continuing their journey within and around you. And they have dropped the heaviness that you have spoken of.
Yeah, thank you. It's just, I heard it and I thought, is that the sort of subject to bring into our conversations? And I thought that's exactly the types of subjects. Like, we don't want to shy away from anything, and especially mirroring what's going on in our society and our world.
Yes. And we want to be clear, even in cases of outward suicide, we do not want anyone to be concerned about, for either themselves or their loved ones, about the karmic consequences. Because karma, people equate with punishment.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. There is no punishment. There are some consequences of your choices. There is the law of cause and effect, and that will be in play. Now, it may be that there was a lesson that you could not complete within that lifetime because of that. So you will come back again in a subsequent lifetime to redress that lesson. There may be healing of your soul on the other side. Because only someone who is deeply suffering would choose to complete such an action.
Yeah.
And so in that state of not being healed, there is that suffering. That is the consequence. The suffering is already experienced. And if you have anyone, blame that person on top of their suffering that they had already experienced. You're only compiling suffering on top of suffering. And certainly even to the surviving family members and friends, more suffering again. Now, will that soul wish to make amends for the suffering they caused for their sudden departure? Yes. Just like if you upset a friend, a child, a loved one, you will wish to make amends. It is not a punishment, dear one.
Yeah.
You would naturally wish to make it up to them. And you will make agreements subsequently to do so.
And I actually had a dear friend that chose that path. And when we met, we were instant friends, and like we were working together. And from the first shift, we became like inseparable. And it turned out she was 5 hours older than me. So it was like, wow, we just come into the same sorts of star patterns, not the same, but similar age. And circumstances had happened. And when she did choose that path, I had the guilt a bit that I should have, you have those thoughts, I should have contacted her more because we've gone on with our lives and that sort of thing. And actually, when I did the Akashic reading work, the very first time I opened my records and went in, she was there waiting.
Yes.
With the big cuddle and I'm fine, I'm fantastic. And it was just like, oh, and it wasn't your fault and all that beautiful reconnection in within the records. And so yeah, that really lightened it, the whole process for me as well.
Yeah. Yes. And she was waiting.
Yeah.
To be able to tell you.
Yeah, she was like pushing other ones that I'm first.
She was waiting. Yeah.
There was a massive mob waiting for me to finally come in through the doors. She was like, no, I'm first. So that was unexpected because I'm thinking we're going into the records and that'll be I was thinking more about guides and that sort of thing. Well, they were all there, but so was this beautiful being as well, my dear friend. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's all I have for the moment. If unless you would like to bring us through anything else that you wanted to bring up today in this moment.
Not in this moment. What we will do is we'll step aside. It's now our turn to step aside and allow Ariy to come through. They're waiting to come through. And then we'll come back at the end after Saint Germain and then we'll cap it all off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, dear one. Okay, so it's Vicky again. I'm going to bring Ariy through. They're already here. Yes, we are here, dear ones. We were waiting and waiting.
A little bit eager.
We were a bit eager, but let us say we're always eager to bring through the joy.
Yes, and I was eager to reconnect with you, and especially the subjects we've been discussing. It would be lovely to bring in a bit of joy. But I realised when I was having a bit look back at some of our other channelings that we haven't properly introduced you to everyone.
Yes.
I know who you are and Vicky knows who you are, but our broader audience wouldn't know more than what we did say at the beginning, that you're actually my guides, that you're a Pleiadian collective. We didn't mention then, Pleiadian collective of 7.
Yes.
So would you like to introduce yourselves and a little bit more about what you do as well as being my guides?
Sure. What we'll say is that our name is Ariy. We are a collective energy. streaming from the Pleiadian consciousness of light. We connect with you, dear one, Kerry, as personal guides. And we share a mission in spreading joy.
Mhm.
Now, for some that may seem too specific. For some that it may even seem frivolous. And we would say, oh dear ones, you're being way too serious about it all. For joy is love, is light, is truth. And if you have not joy, then where is the love? And if you have not joy, where is the light? What does it mean to be light-hearted? Having your heart filled with light, bubbling over, and sharing and expressing this light with others. What wonderful joy that is. And so when you connect with the energy of joy, there is healing in that. There is wonder in that. There's deliciousness in that. There's playfulness. There is a reason why they say, be like a child to enter into the kingdom of heaven. For a child now knows joy. Unadulterated joy. And think of that word, unadulterated. You turn into adults. Oh, with your burdens and your responsibilities. And we know that they are there, dear ones. We know. But then remember the joy. You're going to have responsibilities. We are not saying forget about your responsibilities. We are not irresponsible. We take accountability for ourselves, and we feel great accountability for the path of humanity upon this earth. For it is the Pleiadian consciousness that supported the seeding of this planet. So we're here to oversee your ascension, dear ones, back into the light, back into joy. So let us say that we are serious about our joy. And you may understand that when you are being too serious, dear ones, you have moved too far away from your true nature. For your true nature is joyous. And we will be serious for a moment so you can understand that gravitas of what we are trying to say. Is that when you have had experiences that have robbed you of your joy, that is a travesty, a tragedy. And we would never say to you, dear ones, that it is your fault. We would say to you, dear ones, you get to choose, however, to tread that path back to joy. And you may not know how to get there. Joy may seem too far away from where you are, dear ones. If you're experiencing depression, the dark night of the soul, or any form of suffering. So then you may ask, what is my path to healing? And your healing will bring you to your joy, ultimately. Now, what we want to say and remind you is that when you're too serious about your healing, you may forget about your joy again. So this is why we remind you, once again, you do not have to be serious about your healing either. So you may say, okay, this is what I need to heal. But if I have an opportunity to be playful over here, what does that serve? Is there not healing in playfulness? There is. Is there not healing in laughter? There is. There is so much healing in play. You have play therapy, dear ones. It's like, when did you forget to play? Too busy being adults. We know that adult play is synonymous now with only that which is kinky. You can do that too. That is play. But there is even more to adult play that so many of you have forgotten. So, is that an adequate introduction to who we are?
I think so. You've got a bit of kinky in there, so yeah.
Play with your bodies, dear ones. We are not saying anything bad about that, but you have such a narrow definition of dear ones. Broaden the definition of play.
And I've just done a few workshops with people, and funny enough, we're called Returning to Joy.
Funnily enough.
Yeah, it's funny that. And in it, I do talk to them about our belief systems, and like we work around a drawing exercise I do. And I said, who could draw when they were 5? And everybody put their hand up. And I said, who can draw now? And one person put their hand up.
Yes.
And I thought, well, at what stage did you decide you can't draw anymore?
Exactly.
You know, step back into that childlike world where we weren't looking at perfection in everything.
Yes. Where everything is possible. Everything is possible. When you move into that adult world, you are taught, you are programmed to look at your skills as being able to be monetized. So only that which you can receive money for has value. That is another travesty.
Yeah.
For the value in creativity in any form is through pure creation. You are connecting with creator energy, being creators here on this earth plane. You step away from that creator energy, you are now becoming more automatons, reproducing what others are asking you to produce. Now, it is not to say that you cannot engage in an agreement for work with an energy exchange of money for you to produce certain things within your structures of society that is necessary. Now, what we would say, however, is that it does not mean that that has more value over something that you do not receive a financial benefit for. What about the pure joy of it? What energy exchange does that give to you?
And in everything we do, we're looking for, even though if we're not aware of it, it's like we might want to own a new car. Well, what do we want to own it for? One of the reasons would be because the old one's breaking down all the time, but we might want it this color and all the rest. And it's, well, why? Because it makes me feel good. It brings joy to me, and I want to. Once you work people through it, they end up going, oh, it's to bring joy.
Yes.
So most things you can sit down with people and work out what is it they want in life, in the, monetary things to purchase and that.
Yes.
All of them are leading it towards joy.
Yes.
So when you start breaking it down to people that way, and they go, oh, it's joy I'm really after. Yes, the new car's fantastic, but it's really the end game is joy.
Yes.
Happiness.
Let us say that there is a basic level to safeguard your physical needs of shelter, food, clothing, etc. Beyond that basic level, so that you have those basic needs assured, then everything else is something that can be measured through joy and be brought through joy.
Mm, mm,
So if you have, let us think of an example. You have someone who, let us go back to your drawing example.
mm-hmm,
But it could be any form of creativity, dancing, artwork, movement, creating something with your hands, whatever it may be. Now, when you have that and then are told either A, it's not good enough, it's flawed or imperfect in some way, B, that it does not have value in and of itself, and C, you could never make a living with that anyway,
mm,
what does that engender? A sense of apathy about it. A kind of decision to cut yourself off from it. Oh, well, there's no point in me engaging in that. And often, the very act of saying you must create that so that you can earn money of it robs it of its joy. You're
mm.
doing it for the sheer joy of it, not to prop you up in your livelihood. So engage in your work, but find your joy. Sometimes they will overlap. Other times they'll be separated. But the more that you can find moments of joy within it, within everything, then you can move into a richer and more fuller life. What we will also say on this again, another travesty, is so many children who are naturally creative have the creative impulses drummed out of them because it is not valued as it is.
Mm.
They have created something. It should be valued in and of itself. They have exercised their pure creative abilities. And to see it diminished in any way, do you know what that does to that dear child? It shames them. It doesn't just diminish what they've created, it diminishes them.
Them, yeah.
So it diminishes them, they move more away from themselves. And so when they move away from themselves, they move away from their joy.
And that's exactly where I'm going with my questioning of what's happening with our youth
Yes.
at the moment. I'm experiencing, first of all, I just want to step back
Yes.
and talk about the energy of the now moment is that more creative ideas and more creative choices are becoming more accepted now.
Yes.
So that energy is changing,
Yes.
but it's not changing in the school system.
No.
So in the school system, it's still you still got to get your aim for your A's or do the best you can there. Sports is still supported quite well, but the creative arts are still very slow to get any traction in the in school system as in general, not all schools. This is not about all schools, just the system. So what I'm finding now is even though the energy of the planet's changing and it's becoming more knowledgeable that you can create, our kids aren't getting that supported as well in the school system and in this age group of, I'm going to sort of target it in the youth.
Yes.
And what I'm finding is I'm getting surrounded. I'm always with a lot of kids in that age group. There is more and more anxiety.
Yes.
There's more and more of them going in and the doctors are giving them medication for anxiety.
Yes.
The medical system, as we all know, is so under pressure at the moment, and it's not able to cope with the amount of people in general that's coming through the doors. I mean, we've got people waiting on 6 months waiting list to go
Yes.
and get support from psychologists, psychiatrists,
Yes.
counsellors, and the
Yes.
like. So my biggest thing I've been confronted with this week is cutting. The children or the young teenagers that are cutting themselves to feel something.
Yes.
So it's like not just one child. I've heard of multiple this week that are within the circles that I go in, and then more kids that are wanting to check themselves into the hospital wards at 13 and 15
Yes.
and such. So while I am not directly connected to them, as in I'm not in their family
Yes.
units, and it's obviously something in Blueprint world that's creating or partly creating these experiences for these young ones. And we've got all those other realms coming where the school system's doing this, the home system's doing that, the COVID systems, the weather at the moment, we're getting hammered with rain.
Yes.
So everyone's pushed down the east coast. We're all pushed back indoors and with endless
Yes.
rain. What is it? So sorry, it's a long way to get there, but what
Yes.
is it that we can do, the people that are getting information, or like these kids are saying to me, like my friend's cutting themselves or my daughter's cutting themselves, and some of them, the parents have no idea. What
Yes.
is it we can do to support them while they move through this? Like one girl I've been this week, as she's run out of places to cut, she started cutting her chest.
Yes.
So she's ran out of legs, run out of arms. She's now doing her chest.
Yes.
I don't know what to do with that one in
Yes.
particular, but other than be a lighthouse.
Yes.
Be a lighthouse that they can come and say what they need to say and be heard.
Yes.
What is it that you can talk to us about that? Because I know that everyone in the healing world, everyone that will be attracted to look at this type of work that we engage in,
Yes.
will be having a similar experience of an explosion of youth with anxiety, cutting, on medications. What is it we can do as individuals and then possibly as a collective
Yes.
to be the lighthouse?
Yes. And we love the analogy of being the lighthouse. And for those who aren't familiar with that, is to shine your light so that you can guide the ships into a safe harbor. So that means shining your light so you can guide and support people to safety. And safety is the true mechanism here, dear one. Now, we want to be clear, you cannot have joy if you are unsafe. You cannot shine your light if you are feeling unsafe. You cannot even have access to who you really are if you're feeling unsafe. You will act out of a survival mechanism, protective mechanisms, and out of the wounded parts of you, than out of the true core of who you are. The true core of who you are is where your joy lives. The other parts are adaptations to the adverse experiences one may have experienced. So that seems like a tautology. Let's be more clear. So someone who is cutting themselves is experiencing deep pain in some way, either by feeling numb. So this may seem a paradox. They may feel so numb and so disconnected from their bodies and unreal from their bodies that they will cut to feel something again. Conversely, their pain may be so much that cutting is a relief.
Relief. Yeah.
Now, what this can set up is an addiction to the cutting. And this is what can be confusing to people. And cutting or self-harm in this sense, we want to say in a non-suicidal context. Do you need to
Yes.
check something, dear one?
Yeah, my dog keeps wanting to come in and out, so I'm still listening.
Okay.
Oh,
So we will allow little Maxie to come in.
I keep letting him out, and the kids keep letting him back in because he whines to come in and whines to go out.
Yes. So it can be very confusing for those who are around people, or young people particularly, who cut. And it can be very confronting. And even this topic of conversation can be confronting for some people. So we will say to everyone, look after yourself so you can feel safe through this process. Now, if someone is addicted to cutting, you're going to have to deal with the addictive element. Now, when you're a non-professional, what is that person seeking from you? Non-judgment, first of all. Very difficult if you're going to have a visceral reaction to the cutting itself. And we can understand how confrontational that may be. So the non-confrontation around that is non-judgmental. Acceptance of them. Unconditional acceptance of them. It is not to say that you are condoning the behavior. Yet you can discuss the behavior in a way that is neutral. Why? Be curious about it. Why do you do this? How does it make you feel? What makes you want to do it? What do you feel before? What do you feel afterwards? And then you may begin to understand the mechanism that drives that behavior in that young person. Do they need professional assistance? Yes. To support them, because there are many psychological processes that are going on. Yet we agree with you, there are waiting lists for young people to see professionals. Some practices have closed their referral processes. They are so busy. And that is something that has occurred. You have, as a collective, lived through. Now we're going to talk just this corner of Australia. Bushfires.
Yeah.
A global pandemic. And multiple flooding within a 2 to 3 year period. Now, for someone who's a young person, say they are 14, this began when they were 9, say, a very formative part of their development, then of course their coping mechanisms are going to be limited. What is cutting? Cutting is a coping mechanism. It may seem like an unhealthy one, a maladaptive one, a bad one, but it's a coping mechanism nonetheless. Do they need alternative coping mechanisms? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, loving support, non-judgment, unconditional acceptance, curiosity. And let us go further and say a network of support around them. No one person can be enough in these circumstances for that person, because everyone is then needing to rally around a young person who is suffering to the degree that they are cutting themselves. So a network of support. This, more than anything, relational safety. And this is what we're going to explain what that means. To feel safe in relationships. So for that person, young person, to feel safe in a relationship with someone, if they can experience safety, then it's going to mitigate the need for harm. But the paradox is, if they've experienced trauma, then their body's going to remember the lack of safety. And the body's playing out the memory of threat and danger. And this is what is causing within the body. So the more that they experience relational safety through professional, therapeutic relationships, as well as an informal network around them, the more that they can move through this. So collectively, what can you do? Have more of a community spirit, dear ones.
Yeah.
As a collective, you've lost that community spirit. It is there when you rally through hard times.
Yeah.
You will have seen it post bushfires, post floods, where people rally around a community through crisis. This is beneficial for this young person. Yet we would say, can you go beyond the crisis and have a community spirit even before there is a crisis? Imagine that. A community and network of support around every single child, young person, adult, so that they all feel supported. What we'd also like to say, given that we talked about relational safety, is at some point someone will have to ask them, is there someone in their lives who make them feel unsafe?
Yeah.
And we wouldn't shy away from that question.
Yeah.
What we would say to them is give them permission to not answer if they're not ready to.
I call it an out clause. Yeah.
Yes.
Give them an out clause.
Yeah. They don't have to answer.
No.
But you're giving them the opportunity to.
Yeah.
And you may say to them, you don't have to answer now, but you may come back at any time and answer this question, and I'll be ready to hear your answer.
Yeah.
And if you don't wish to answer me, who would you like to tell? Or what conditions do you need?
Yeah.
And so therefore, again, it's a way of supporting the young person so that they can feel safe. It is giving them a sense of autonomy and empowering them to know that they have a choice of who and how and when to speak up.
Yeah, that's what that's what I've been endeavouring to do, is create that safe space. That's what my house is. It's like one of those havens that I welcome in all of the kids' friends, and and it's always been an open forum for discussing any subject. And
we would say that the discussing of cutting and the discussing of suicide itself does not bring it on. It actually opens it up into a safe space.
Yeah.
What there can be, this is something to be aware of, is that where one young person is cutting, there may be greater likelihood for another young person to cut, because that behavior is then adopted as their coping mechanism. So in that sense, it can be adopted by others, but it's not the pure discussing in a safe space. And this is where it is always helpful to engage with professionals to support the adults supporting the young people as well as the young people themselves.
Yes, it's just seeing an explosion of it, and like what you were just saying then, that there's a bit of copying going on.
Yes.
Definitely in the even in the going and getting the medication at the doctor's, like those sorts of things are like, well, my friend's on these, so I'm going to go get them too, without getting that counselling first and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's all great to know
Mm.
and confirm that what I have been creating here is in the right direction to do what I
Yes.
can.
Yes.
And there will come a time where that might have to expand into family conversations as well for some of these
Yes.
kids. But at
Yes.
their guidance, probably, like when do they, once
Yes.
more, those questions, have you told family? When do you
Yes.
think would be a good time? Would you like me there? All those extra questions to support them once you've created that foundation of safety and non-judgment.
And that's what we want to say. It is all about safety. You cannot have, as we said, joy without safety.
Mm,
And for those who have felt unsafe for a very long time, joy can feel unsafe.
yeah, yeah,
Joy can feel unsafe.
yeah.
What the greatest tragedy is that.
Mm,
So when joy can feel unsafe, this is where you can understand why we would take such a big stance on safety, because it is necessary for that child, that young person, that adult to be able to experience joy. Now, that is part and parcel of the healing journey, as we have already said, that you need to move through your healing to come to your joy. That may be a process. You cannot go from 0 to 100 overnight
mm,
in that sense. But you may still ask them, what is it that they do enjoy? What do
yeah,
they love? What lights them up? And begin to gold mine for gold for them.
yeah.
What makes them feel good?
Mm,
And that can be another segue. But we would say tread carefully, slowly,
slowly.
according to the safety, their felt sense of safety, according to professional recommendations. Now, all of this is going to be a bit of a dance, and
Mm,
we
mm,
possibly pun intended, but
yeah.
we
I
wish
had
to,
already seen the dance in my mind. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
because dancing can be an activity that helps move the body and helps make them be more in their bodies if that's what they're needing to do. That
mm,
may feel more safe than something else, but for another young person, that's not the case. It is about seeing that young person as the individual as they are, as individual that they are. They are the experts in themselves. What do they feel comfortable with and what do they not? And you'll
yeah.
find the path.
Mm, mm.
Yes.
No, thank you for that. Yeah. Um, Kind of all my questions were heading that way. So I want to swing it back around to the kookaburra.
Oh, yes.
So I'd love you to tell us a story about the kookaburra, because our animal guides are very important. Well, they're very important to me, so I'm speaking for
Yes.
myself. Um, but in particular, kookaburras are always known as that they laugh when
Yes.
they sing. So, but I don't find their laughter as, it's more like there's a wisdom in it.
Yes.
There's a wisdom, and quite often they'll point things out. So whether it's an animal guide or anything like that, kookaburra, what could you tell us about kookaburra that, like for myself, I see the animals and I notice what's going on. They're part of my
Yes.
symbiology in life and tell
Yeah.
me stories. So from your point of view, if we could talk about kookaburra.
Well, just by the kookaburra's laugh, how do you feel
Mm, mm,
when you hear the kookaburra's laugh? Joyful.
mm. Yeah.
So there's certainly an element of joy with the kookaburra. The kookaburra, and for those who are unfamiliar with the kookaburra, is an
Mm,
Australian native bird with a very distinctive laugh. It sounds like a laugh. You must look up the laugh and what it sounds like. And often once one kookaburra laughs, then the other kookaburras laugh too.
Yeah.
They engage with a community spirit. They
Yes.
engage with their family network. So there's an energy of family, kinship, community, camaraderie, friendship. There's a real sense of the camaraderie with the kookaburras. They look out for each other and they spread their joy as they spread their wings. So whenever you hear kookaburra sing, that is laugh, then connect with that energy. Invite it in. Ask what it has a message for you. What is the message? Is it a reminder to you to laugh? Is it a reminder to check in on someone? Is it a reminder to be in the moment, stop, appreciate the kookaburra's laugh, and take in all that is occurring in that moment? And that is very much the energy of the kookaburra.
Yeah. Yeah, I love them. I just thought that would be a nice way to just lighten our energy
Yes.
back off. And it was kookaburras that actually came in and started singing when we were recording the January Consciousness of Love.
Yes. Yes.
And it actually came through on the recording as well. So I just thought, since I've started on my solid spiritual journey, I would say when
Yes.
I've really, really stepped into this space, is I do notice these things more and more, the birds singing and the sounds of
Yes.
the leaves, the wind going
Yes.
through the leaves and all those
Yes.
things. As part of your path, your senses do become more
Yes, they
aware
do. Yes.
of what's going on around us all the time.
What we would say that's part and parcel of the spiritual journey is that when your senses do become heightened, and then you become more aware of your natural environment and the messages from the birds, the animals, the whispers of the trees, the plants, the insects, everything can convey a message, a meaning, a sign, a symbol for you. And if you stop and attune to what is unfolding for you, then you can connect with the wisdom of Gaia herself. And she has much to say. And there are messages through the animals and the whole animal kingdom, through the plant kingdom, through the mineral kingdom. This is all part of the divine. And so everything can have a message for you. And the more that you connect with that, the more you flow with that. And you will go about your day seeing signs and symbols everywhere. And let us say, you are blessed to live in a country with such a wonderful variety of birds and animals.
That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so is there anything else that you would like to discuss or bring to mind for us?
Yes, let us say this before we go. You, dear listeners, dear ones, will have noticed a move through some ups and downs that people may experience in your life, your trials and your tribulations, as well as your joys and your happiness. And that is very much representative of what is your human experience. You move through the lows and you experience the highs. And let us say that we appreciate this more nuanced understanding of what joy is and where it fits in with this broad human experience. For when we say our mission is joy, we mean it wholeheartedly, lightheartedly. Yet we also appreciate is not the right word. Understand the context of your experiences that have moved you away from joy. And we have explored some of these today. For if you can understand what moves you away from joy, then you can begin to understand what can move you back into joy. Because it can be simply enough to watch something funny to bring you back to joy in some circumstances. But that is nowhere near enough for another under different circumstances. So we do not make light of the heaviness of the suffering of people who have moved so far away from joy that they are nowhere near it. What we say is have compassion for those people. Hold them in your hearts. Breathe that in into your heart centers. Allow your hearts to expand in understanding. Yes, there has been so much suffering on the planet. And yes, it is time to bring more joy to humanity. But we do not wish to leave anyone behind. And so if we're only to speak to you who knows joy, and we forgot about the others, then we are not fulfilling our mission. We wish to bring all back into the fold. No one left behind. All brought into the heart and mind of the divine. And so we say to you, dear ones, move with light, with love, with truth, and ultimately with joy. From our hearts to yours.
For mine and all those are in this space.
Yes.
Back to you with love and joy.
And joy. We are complete.
Thank you.
Wow.
It's hard to let them go, but anyway.
It is. Yes.
I know they're still here, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, that was an important conversation to have. Thank you for asking those questions.
It's my honour to be given this opportunity to explore these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For the greater good of all.
Yeah. And my hope is that, people feel that there's no holds barred, there's no topic that we can't grapple. People sometimes feel that heavier subjects are not spiritual enough. Then where do you find spirit if you're not even in the darkness? So I think that's such an important conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. And then on the other side of it, you think, because they are the guides of joy, and we have so much fun with them.
Yes, we do.
We don't want to think that what we discuss in wanting to bring joy to everyone is spiritual bypassing.
Exactly.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not.
No.
It's about bringing the whole realm of experience
Yes.
into the light.
Yes, exactly. And, I think that's what the whole healing journey is all about. And, it can be hard. You and I both know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it can be wonderful also. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you would like to prepare for now it's the first time we're
Saint
bringing
Germain.
Saint
Yes.
Germain through in this space.
Yes, and I think before I bring him through, um, it's interesting because he's the alchemist and it's all about turning base into gold. And so that means turning suffering into light.
Yeah,
So I think when you understand alchemy in that way, I think there'll be a beautiful unfolding in this conversation around this.
yeah.
Okay, let me bring it through. Dear ones,
Hello and welcome.
have I been waiting for you?
For millennia by chance.
Well, let me say, it has been a grand unfolding.
Mm.
And I have been physical. So while the keepers have said that they've been waiting for millennia, I can't
Yeah,
actually claim that for myself.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe, yeah, but it has been a while. It has been a grand unfolding of experience. And I'm overjoyed to be with each of you.
And we're so happy to have you come to the table as such
Yes.
and join in our merry play dates.
We like the merry
Um,
play dates.
mm, mm. So I'd like to start off with probably probing and asking a few questions about who you are and
Yes.
what you do and how you connect with us. So I'm just looking at my notes, and my research links you back to the Count Saint Germain in the
Yes.
1700s. And I wanted to confirm that is part of your energy, part of one of your
Yes.
lifetimes,
Yes.
whether it was your last one,
Yes.
but it was. But we know you as an ascended master or a Christed being of light. So we
Yes.
know that you definitely did walk on this earth
Yes.
with us. So you've been connected to alchemy, which we all
Yes.
in the healing realms have definitely connected with you.
Definitely. Yes.
But we see, yeah, yeah, and we see political connections,
Yes.
wisdom, theosophy, all sorts of things like that.
Yes.
So, who would you like to introduce yourself as truly so that we
Oh.
can just go straight to the heart of who you are, not who people have said you are?
Well, that is a wonderful question. Let me say, like any one of your guests that comes through, we are all
Mhm.
multifaceted beings.
Yeah.
And each and every one of us may express in different ways to different people. So one may say, I am this, and another may say, I am that. And that is quite okay. It's not to say that that person is wrong and that person is right, or vice versa. But it is what is necessary in that moment of time for that person. So, like Archangel Michael said, do not limit me. I will also say that.
Mm, mm, mm.
Do not limit me. Do not limit any of us to put us in a particular box of how we should be. Now, of course,
Yes.
there is some continuity of what it is that we do. For each of us will have a particular mission, so to speak. Let's not even use that word. Let us call it a calling. I have my calling. You have your calling.
Yep.
Everyone has a calling. And then there's a resonance among all these callings. And through the magic of symbiosis, we'll connect with that. And then there will be an alchemical process through that is greater than the sum of the parts, that then expresses outwardly as magic.
Mm.
So for me to explain myself as one thing will make another expression of me wrong. What I
Yeah.
will say is that most of you will connect with my work
Mm.
through the violet flame.
Mm.
And that is a useful beginning, dear ones,
Mm-hmm.
to connect with my energy. And let me say, for some of you, we have crossed paths before. For I've had many lifetimes, as have you.
Mm.
For some of you, maybe not so much. It does not matter. The opportunity is here and now. And you may connect with me or not. You may see me as the master alchemist. Oh, that sounds serious. You know, I was known as the court jester at one time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. It was very useful to get around the
Yeah.
pomp of the royal courts around Europe, flying under the radar,
Yeah. Yeah.
spreading my magic the way I could.
Mm.
So let me say that when you begin through the violet flame, there is wonder and magic within that. It is an alchemical process of transmutation to transmute energy from one form to another, from the lead to gold, from the base
Mm-hmm.
to light, from suffering to healing. And this is why it is so useful as a tool to apply in clearing your homes, your bodies, your minds, and to bring healing and transformation. What I will say, you may have noticed, my energy can be a bit playful.
Mm.
What I will say is play with my energy. Connect with me, or not. But if you choose to connect
Mm.
with me, do not think I will be necessarily serious. And what I mean by that is, I will not come in like a master. Like
Mm.
someone you may envision with a grey beard and grey hair and very serious. But as someone who is light, who is playful, and the master at bringing the darkness back into the light.
It's funny you should say that because I wore my I Dream of Jeannie hairdo today to bring in the magic.
I
And as you're
received
saying
the
that, I'm
honouring.
thinking,
Yes.
wow, she always called her person on the show master.
Master. Yes.
And I'm like, here I am in my I Dream of Jeannie ponytail. So I had a bit of an inkling you were going to be lots of fun.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Mm.
I was just recalling Vicky first meeting me, and I know that she spoke of it at the beginning.
Earlier. Yep.
And that is my energy. It is unexpected, perhaps. That is part and parcel of the taking yourselves too seriously, you then apply that and project that onto us. Remember, we are no longer burdened by human life. There is something in that. It's not to say that human life is only a burden, but we do not have the day-to-day responsibilities that you do have. We have things to do, but there is a grand plan and a vision and a network of light that we all contribute to, and that is a calling, and it calls us forth to be a part of this. It is inspired, a creative process. It is not what you would consider a burden, what you would see as the humdrum of responsibility. So while some would speak of what I am responsible for, I do not wish to use that word in the way you would use that word, because it would make it seem like I have burdens. In that sense, I do not. I have a calling, as I said, an impulse to evolve forward, which involves humanity and the earth as well.
And when you were talking about like transmutation, because that's what I'm regularly calling you for, especially clearing spaces and large groups of people and that sort of thing. But I quite often, it's funny you mentioned like lead to gold too, because actually when I send it up to you and through the violet flame, I actually see it transforming and coming back as gold sparkles.
Yes.
Back down onto the earth plane and out into the atmosphere.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes a bit of pink and silver in there, but a bit of gold, pink or silver seems to be the colours that come back.
Yes. Yes,
and
that is very much
my
part of the process.
Yeah, okay.
You see what you see. Others may not necessarily see that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Is it transforming it into gold? Yes. Is it always literal gold? Not necessarily. We use the term gold of illumination as a broader term, a gold of enlightenment. The gold is a broader symbol of what you're seeking for. So it is the grand outcome, the returning to the light.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, I feel very aligned with you. I quite often get like magenta, violet waves coming through in my mind when I'm in meditation and that sort of thing as well. But that started for me at the exact same retreat. I feel that Vicky met you as well. And funny enough, we're staying in the same room together.
Yes.
So now, where was I going? I was getting all excited about that. Yes, so I feel aligned to you personally myself.
Yes.
So I don't know what it is that I could ask you to maybe mention some other incarnations that you've had, whether that would spark connection for others as well, that have had with you in that lifetime, other lifetimes, or even in this one now.
Yes. I do not see one more than another that will help people connect with that. I will say that one that people most know me, other than Saint Germain, is as Father Joseph.
Okay.
In other words, Yeshua's father. not literal father, but you understand what I mean.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And father figure.
Mm.
And had certainly a role in his life.
Mm.
Now, whether people need to
Uh-huh.
connect me through that life or any other life. For example, if I mention Merlin, that's a whole other energy.
Mm-hmm.
What will people get the sense of? It's
Yeah,
almost fanciful for some.
yeah.
And so, even mentioning Father Joseph and say Father Joseph for you to understand who I'm referring to.
And he's seen community. Yeah.
Yes. Again, it is hard for the human mind to comprehend all that I have been.
Mm.
From my perspective, I see it easier for people to connect with me directly into my energy as I am.
Now, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think also just wanted to show that, like, as an ascended master, that we all have a journey,
Yes.
and that all of us are always endeavoring to keep moving forward in accessing that blueprint and doing
Yes.
what it is we set out to do. And
Yes.
so kind of that was part of it. And also just, yeah, that connection. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, let me share on that. You may read about any master and see a list of a number of masterful lives. And
Yeah.
it may seem intimidating that you would see this list of achievements across lifetimes. Now, there is that, of course. You can understand that any soul evolves over time, and that even where I am in my soul's evolution is the evolving into more, for we always continue our evolution, and yet being very comfortable and happy in my role, in my calling, in what I'm doing and bringing forth. For there is mastery in that.
Yeah.
Right. Now, when it comes to this list of lifetimes, what people do not generally include are the lists of lifetimes where there is no outward wonderful achievement, there is not fame, there is not some well known understanding of my
Yeah.
lives, for example. Now, does that make any of those lifetimes less valuable? No. And I wish to say that so you can understand, if you do not have such a grand lifetime, does it mean that your lifetime is any less valuable? For each is a stepping stone to the other. Each adds up to the ultimate culmination of these grander lifetimes where you are called into a greater calling to be more and express more of who you are. Each is necessary to the whole. And in moving through the incarnation cycle, you are here to express and experience every part of it. What is considered on a human scale lesser than, as well as greater than. From a soul perspective, it is not seen that way. It is seen as weaving a broad tapestry across the whole. Each contributes to the richness of this tapestry of who you really are.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
So just stepping back into the violet flame conversation, that is probably, speaking from experience, from
Yes.
my personal experience, is the most called on reason that I would call you into
Yes.
my world.
Yes.
What is something else that we could call upon? Because we have so many guides in our world, but you aren't actually, being ascended master, have walked on this planet as well. So there's that differentiating of
Yes.
experience for you.
Yes.
So understanding that you've been here and you're on the other side of the veil
Yes.
as well. What is it something else that you would recommend that people could reach out for assistance with, in particularly with you?
Let me say that for any ascended master or crested being of light,
Yeah.
by very definition, we have experienced life on earth as human beings. So while an angelic being holds the ultimate compassion and love for you, they do not have the experience that we have had of being human and of having moved through our mastery through those incarnation cycles. So let me say, in connecting with any ascended master, you are connecting with their own lived experience of lifetimes as human beings. For me particularly, well, I ascended far more recently,
Yes.
and so my memory is a bit sharper when it comes to the human experience. So I invite you to call upon me when you are struggling with your human experience. I still remember it well. Now, I do not carry those memories in a sense that they burden me. I see it all from the grand tapestry perspective, and yet can recall what it's like to move through those troughs and valleys up into the peaks of experience. So if you're experiencing one of those troughs, one of those lows, and you are wondering how to get out of this, how to move through it, then you may call upon me and ask for guidance. You may call upon me to bring through the violet flame through that experience to help transmute it so you can move through it with greater ease. Now, let me say that not me, not any member of the divine will take away from your experience that which is necessary for you to have.
Yeah.
For if you have called in an experience for a particular reason, I could not undo that for you. I would be doing the greatest of disservice, and indeed it would not be possible. This is where you would call them soul overrides.
Yeah.
So in that case, it is the support in moving through. Yet, let it be an open dialogue between yourself, your soul, and us, the divine, any member of us. And ask for that guidance. Ask for assistance and support. Ask for alchemy. If you perceive us to not help you, is you've either blocked the assistance and not allowed yourselves to receive it. And often that is because you do not want to hear what we have to say. It is an answer that does not seem palatable to you. It is a path that you do not wish to take. It is not because we have not given the assistance. You have chosen not to hear us. Or it is because your soul override is such that it is to your detriment for us to take away an experience that is necessary to your own soul evolution. In other words, is therefore in your best and highest good.
I think that's a really valid point that I sort of wanted to bring into the conversation. Was sometimes, like when I know I'm doing shamanic practices and I might need to look at cords, people have cords
Yes.
connecting to whatever that might be, and we might do the work of cutting the cords, but I feel sometimes that I might be doing the work, but I'm working with my spiritual team. So we
Yes.
are doing that work, but it might not be in the highest good of the person to have that cord completely cut. So I think sometimes when we're doing that action, we might be actually just lifting that person up for a moment in time so that they can possibly find their own pathway to do that for themselves.
Yes.
And remove the charge from whatever it is that they feel's connecting them to bringing them down. So I think in the spiritual community that a lot of people will come and see healers and think, well, they're going to cut my cords and I'm going to move on with life, and that problem's not going to persist in my life. And I think you've kind of just highlighted that area as well for us.
Well, there is magic, of course. There is the alchemy. But you must always remember the agenda of the soul. And if you're attempting to remove karmic cords, for example, and yet the karma is not done, they will not cut away all karma, cut away all karmic cords. That will be gone up to the Council of Light, to the karmic board. For if that karma is not completed, it is not balanced, then not all cords can be cut. That may be some. Is what is in the best and highest good of both souls. So let me also say that energetic cords can be cut. However, they may be regenerated.
That's what I thought.
And so energetic cords are one thing, karmic cords are another. Energetic cords you may cut as part of your energetic hygiene, so to speak. Just like you need to shower and brush your teeth every day, there may be something that you need to do for even those who are closest to you that you love dearly, where there may be a leakage of energy. Over time, you'll become better at not having that. But when it comes to those big cords, the karmic cords, you cannot bypass your spiritual journey. You cannot jump ahead that which is necessary for you to experience. And so if there is a pattern, a lesson, something that is left uncompleted within a particular relationship, how could anyone take that away on behalf of another? So healers, we would say to you, add in the caveat in your best and highest good. Communicate to your clients. This is not a passive process. You're not wiping the slate clean for them. They must be engaged in the process. Understand, what are they transmuting? What is it in the relationship that has been problematic? What have they learnt from that lesson, from that relationship? How can they then apply that to transform all their other relationships?
Mm.
There is the gold in the
Yep, lead to
healing.
gold. Yeah. Mm. Yep, perfect. You've kind of answered everything that I had prepared for you.
Funny that.
Funny how that happens. So I'd like to open it up to you. Like, you answered the call to come to this particular
Yes.
play date.
Yes.
So what is it that you would like to share with us in this now moment?
I answered the call, so to speak, as you put it. In other words, I volunteered myself to come through.
Yeah.
It was my turn. And as Vicky cycles through first introductions
Yeah.
of those who are in part of the collective that we are called as Ariy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do not imagine for a moment it means I belong to this group and no other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, each of us have a purpose, a calling, a message for every one of you. And each first introduction is first an attunement to our energy, both for Vicky and for you.
Mm-hmm.
And each one is the grand invitation to connect. And that is ultimately why I wanted to come through. It is my invitation to every single one of you to connect with me if you so choose. That you do not need to be special, gifted, a healer, a light worker, insert any title that you wish to connect with me. All may do so. For some, you may not feel drawn to me. That is okay. That is why there's an infinite smorgasbord of light beings to support you. And for those that do, I welcome the opportunity. We can even become intimate in our relationship. And what I mean by that is it's personal.
Yeah.
And this may be something that not everyone will understand. When some would think of me as an ascended master, or any of us as ascended masters, how could this relationship be personal? It always is.
Mm.
It always is. There are some of us that connect more to the collective, others of us more to the individual. I like to think we do both. And for me, I like the up close and personal. It's a great way to get to know each other, isn't it?
Mm.
And you may think of it as a buddy energy, there's a familiarity to it. You may not feel comfortable with that. If that is the case, I can back off. I can back off. If you like me up close and personal, I can come up close and personal and we can have a chat.
Mm-hmm.
I can say I am most grateful for this conversation and this opportunity to cozy up and get to know one another.
I'm so pleased you answered the call. It's funny, as you were saying that, I was leaning in and I had the word buddy going through my head.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, buddy. Or in Australia, we might say mates.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming, for being around us and supporting us all the time.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. Let me convey a blessing from the cosmic heart. And so it is. Wow.
Have some fun with him. I think him and Ariy might be neighbours.
It really makes more sense, how I first received him. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because really, in healings, we too busy, so to speak, doing what we're doing. We're
Yeah.
not having these conversations, certainly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's yeah. I was almost sad to see his energy go, but it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that, of course, that he won't come back or that any of us can't connect with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, wow. Well, I know it's time to bring the keepers back.
And I've had my dog coming in and going, and I've been letting
Mm.
him out, and then the girls let me. I'm like,
I
no,
know.
he's standing there whining. I think he has not been fed. They've forgotten to feed him, and every time he
Oh,
hears them, he's thinking they might be feeding me now.
no wonder. Okay, so I'll bring in the keepers, then you can go feed poor Maxie. Okay. Well, dear ones, that was quite a conversation.
Sure was.
Yes. And how are you feeling, dear one?
Um, Really good. It was refreshing to be able to discuss any subject. No,
Yes.
I've never asked what our parameters were, and I thought there is none. Just
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
comes through, and
Yes.
very grateful that we can have these conversations and these exchanges of energy. Yeah.
Yes. 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 We are grateful too. We are grateful too. So let us move into our final piece as we wrap this all together. You have seen the gamut of joy, of suffering, of death, of transmutation. And yet there's still so much more to the human experience. Let us say that we do not hold parameters for a conversation. In other words, you may ask any question. Are there parameters to what we can share? Yes.
Mm.
Because firstly, there is a limit to what the human mind can comprehend. There is parameters for what is within your best and highest good to know at this time. And there are secrets to the universe that we could not and would not share.
Mm.
So, are there parameters in that sense? Yes.
Yes.
Are there any limitations to what you can ask? No. we would be clear with you what we could answer and what we could not.
Mm.
So do not feel yourselves as hesitant, shy, or unable in any way to ask your questions. We'll answer with truth.
Yeah.
And with love. So, in concluding this conversation, know that there's so much more, dear ones. We are happy to always be part of these. We are happy to anchor them, as Vicky said. Are we the only ones to anchor them? No. Ariy is the other anchor. And Ariy is our special guest.
Mm.
So we extend our gratitude to you and to all who engage with us in this eternal moment of now. And what we will say is we'll allow you to go on to your meals, your dinners, your evenings, the rest of the day, whatever you may be doing. Know that you never walk alone. Whether it is us or any aspect of the divine, you have us around you. And you are supported. You are loved. You are held eternally in our remembrance. We send you so much love. We hold you in our compassionate energy. Through suffering all the way to joy. And this gamut of this human experience. We witness all. And we hold you in our witnessing. What we wish to communicate from our hearts to yours. There it is. The light of this remembrance. So you may feel held, seen, understood, and loved. And so it is.
Beautiful. Thank you. From our hearts to yours.
Well, that was quite a conversation.
Sure was.
Yeah. Lots to digest. Yeah. So I would say for those of you listening, if you have any questions about what came through, or you have future questions, whether for the keepers or someone else, let us know. Look after yourselves through the conversation, and know that we are all being part of a broader spiritual community. And you're right, drink lots of water, because there were energy transmissions through this discussion. And if you're unfamiliar with any of the energies, then it can take some adjustment to attune to them. So I know I'm going to rest now, have some dinner, put my feet up, probably put my Uggs on, my Ugg boots, my sheepskins for people overseas, and get warm. I got warm with the energies and had to take my cardigan off at the beginning. But now that the challenge finished, I'm starting to get cold again. So, yeah, and do whatever you need to do to feel not just comfortable, but gentle with yourselves and help your body's process and your mind's process anything that came through.
Yeah. Yeah. There was pretty heavy, as we said, subjects
Yes.
tonight.
Yeah.
Mm.
And look, I find it fascinating that we can weave a discussion about joy through the most difficult
Yeah.
of conversations. So, what I will share from my perspective, being an integrative therapist, is that when it comes to joy, is when people have experienced complex trauma or chronic trauma or developmental trauma, there is a reduction in the capacity to experience joy. And sometimes a joyous experience is experienced as anxiety because it's an activation of the nervous system. The nervous system doesn't have the capacity to hold that within its baseline, within its window of tolerance. So this then becomes a much broader discussion around trauma and things like that. And I'm not going to open that at the end when we're trying to be gentle. So know that there's a lot of information out there. I'm happy, as I said, to field any person's questions around that, and sort of guide you to material that you may be interested in around that, because it is a big topic.
And I just want to say a big thank you to you, Vicky, because I know that's a lot of energy that comes through
Yes. Yeah.
through your physical being.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
No, you're welcome.
yeah, so thank you for that. And I look forward to what June will bring and
Yes.
what guests will come through. But like I
Yes.
said before, we won't know till a day or two before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you.
No, you're
And
welcome.
I'm going to take up your idea of resting
Yes.
and have a light meal and
Yeah.
get in bed with a good book.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you,
Well,
everyone.
sending
And
much
good
love to
night.
all.
Yeah.
Good night.